Hello and welcome to Blythe Business News. Today I'm joined by Andrew Haythorpe, who's the Chief Executive of ECR Minerals. ECR listed in London on the AIM market with a market capitalisation of around £11 million sterling. The company is very much an exploration operation focused on gold in Australia. Andrew, welcome on the show, your first time with us. You were appointed Chief Executive earlier on this year, I think back in April. For the viewers, two things. First of all, quick bit of your personal resume, your CV, your background in mining, and then what are your plans for ECR? What's the potential in this business?
Well, firstly, thank you, Tim. It's a real pleasure to be here, and ladies and gentlemen, wonderful to be here as well. So to start off on the first question, myself, I was very fortunate. I graduated with a Bachelor and Honours degree in geology, and I had a passion for exploration. And that actually almost took me immediately to the Central Victorian goldfields. Funny enough, drilling and exploring for gold and gold-free systems in Central Victoria, based in Eaglehawk in Bendigo. Not too long after that, I was actually found myself in far north Queensland on more of a regional exploration survey, looking for the next gold deposit, so to speak, in North Queensland, following the Pajingo discovery. And then a little while later, I was actually involved in drilling a drill program with Diamond Drill for about 12 months on an epithermal gold project in central Queensland. So from a geologist's point of view, I had a great sort of breaking into the industry, so to speak. I then segued across to mining analyst, so both on the buy side and the sell side, and I spent a brief time with County NatWest in the research team here in Sydney, Australia, which was a terrific team. I spent some time as an analyst, gold especially, with Hartley Poynton in Perth. And then I found myself working in Bankers Trust back on the buy side as a buy side global energy and resources, which included gold plus many other commodities. And during that time, I actually got to see a lot of gold projects, whether they were full-fledged gold mines in far-flung locations or exploration projects in even more interesting locations sometimes. And then from there, for the last 20 plus years, I've been doing the small company directorship and looking at opportunities to build companies. And I've had a couple of great experiences in gold. One was Micalago, where we actually acquired some assets in China, would you believe, almost 20 years ago, back in the heyday. And that was quite successful at the time. And then from there, I segued across into a company called Crescent Gold, which was a junior explorer with some assets in Laverton. And over a period of about 3 years, we built that from sort of less than $10 million market cap to about $250 million as a gold producer here in West Australia. So since that, I've really had a passion for gold. I think gold is a great space. And for me personally, I like to have more exposure and more interest in gold. And so that brings me to your second question and your second point, Tim, which is really about ECR Minerals and what do I see for us. So, look, I think in a public company space, especially a junior public company, the aspiration should always be to find as much gold as you can, as quickly and economically as you can, of course. And therein lies both the science and the art form, if you like, of looking and exploring and working hard and patience and good luck and good fortune. So I do believe firmly that you sort of really need to be thinking as an executive and a board, you know, for the shareholders, of course, on how do you find 1 million ounces and how do you find more than 1 million ounces in due course. But of course, you have to take those baby steps before you to step out to the big stuff. You don't just walk onto 1 million ounces and say, eureka. So there's all the science and all the work and so on. So I think ECR Minerals has got a great start, especially with its Australian assets. So we've got Central Victoria, of course, and Fosterville has just been an astonishing success. Stall also, but perhaps less well known as a private, Victorian production success story in recent years. So I guess the bottom line is in Victoria it can be done, and then the question is how do you do it? And of course, ECR Minerals has got an extensive footprint of permits, ironically a lot of which the company hasn't had the opportunity to access or look at yet, and I'll talk about that a bit more later on. But secondly is also the company's got a very, very interesting acreage position. In fact, when I say acreage, about 900 square kilometres. It's a massive land holding up in far north Queensland, almost inland from Townsville. So accessibility is pretty good. But the area is actually quite fascinating. There's a number of gold occurrences that were discovered 40, 50 years ago in stream sediment surveys, which include visible gold from pan sampling and so on. Amazingly enough, those samples were never followed up. At least there's no record or knowledge or information of anything being done. So the company's picked up those permits. They've been granted not so many months ago in Queensland. There's been an extended wet season, which is holding us up in terms of accessing the ground. But geologically, that area is, using the vernacular, it is in elephant country. You have Kidston, Mount Lation, Pajingo, Viranansi, the list goes on, Red Dome, Mungana, etc., etc. In that sort of overall volcanogenic massive, or that sort of volcanogenic province up in that part of the world. So you've got visible gold in the creeks. That's definitely anomalous in my experience, and no one's actually had a look. So we might well be the first company to actually get up there in the next few months and start looking.
So I get the sense, with all your experience, you've got your boots dirty, you've run the numbers as an analyst, you've run companies. I get the sense you are excited about the potential in gold for ECR. The one I particularly want to ask you about, though, is the Baylist project, and you've had some very good results on that gold project recently. Can you give us a very quick overview of what's going on at Baylist?
Well, Bayliston's been a fantastic effort by the team, especially Adam Jones, who we've recently sort of acknowledged more formally, at board level and with the share, with the share market release. And he's done a fantastic job in terms of structural geology, understanding the geology, actually getting things sorted out technically. One of the superb piece of work. And the results of that are coming through now, where he can essentially point and shoot the drill rig in terms of lining it up in the collar coordinates and the right azimuth and declination, and drill, and generally speaking, hit or find something, either anomalous or significantly anomalous gold, and et cetera, et cetera. Having said that, moving forwards, we're very enthusiastic to see what we can do to find broader intercepts of gold mineralization, of course. And then, of course, also holding the grade. And, so there's significant encouragement there. So it's a work in progress. And there's other similar things to Baylist, of course, that we're looking at moving forwards, Creswick and Blue Moon in particular. And so that's sort of all planned for the balance of this year moving forwards. And as we do that, there's also, whilst it's not drilling, I think the soil geochemistry work that the team have done in Victoria is sensational. I think that creates real opportunities for us moving forwards to identify whole, fresh, potentially fresh new systems that no one's ever looked at. So again, that's very exciting.
We've talked about already the focus on Australia, but you've also got interests in the Philippines. Now, you've just increased your holding in the
yes.
Cordillera Tiger Gold Resources project in the Philippines. You did have 25%. You've moved that up to 70%. Just give the viewers an insight on the thinking behind that change.
Well, there's been a complex history there, and I think some of the shareholders are more familiar, especially the long-standing shareholders who've been following the story in the Philippines. And there's certainly been some ups and downs in the Philippines. So clearly, with 25% position in the overall project, there's not a lot in it, so to speak, for our shareholders, at least from my perspective anyway. And fortunately, the company had it structured and already done. The hard work had been done over the years of negotiation, whereby the company can increase its shareholding as a function of the spending and the historical work and etc. So of course, you're better off having 70% or even more of something than 25% of something. And so I guess it's a logical step. It's just pure commercial sense to move it to a more of a commercial relevance from a shareholder perspective. Moving forwards, it also gives us flexibility in terms of the way we consider that asset and the value of it for shareholders moving forwards.
Let's have a very quick look. The ECR portfolio is extensive, so I'll not say go through the whole of the portfolio, but what are 2 or 3 highlights that you would like to update us on from the portfolio?
Well, look, I think clearly I'm quite excited about the potential in Queensland. I just haven't come across think it's effectively 900 square kilometres or thereabouts of tenure that we have there. We own 100% of it, and it's almost virgin country. So I have, some background and history in the area, in the general vicinity, I should say. But it's just an area that I haven't heard of anyone actually going out and exploring. So it kind of validates that whole sort of thesis of, well, it is blue sky. Yes, of course, no one's looked at it. Having said that, though, where else in the world do you find visible gold sitting in creeks and then no one's done anything about it? It is fascinating. So I think, and again, my elephant country comment earlier. So to me, that sort of stands out at that level. At a separate level then, back to Victoria, the sort of core business and focus, to bring it back to that. We've got these areas which we have already granted and we're working on, and, we're progressively working through in terms of not just doing gold as a difficult pathfinder in that it's a hit and miss type commodity. It's either there or it's not, and it's very low levels of detection, and it's very valuable at low levels. But certainly with the mineralisation, and certainly what Fosterville and other deposits in Victoria have highlighted, and other parts of the world, of course, is the antimony footprint can actually be a much broader geochemical signature. And let's say most antimony has either gold or lots of gold associated with it. And the reverse is not true. Like if you were actually looking for antimony, you wouldn't go looking for gold hoping to follow up and discover antimony. So the reverse is not true. But with the sampling techniques and the modern technology, et cetera, the team in Victoria have been using handheld device just to do a soil sample, literally just a slightly modified soil sample. It takes minutes to do it, not hours. The reading comes out on the machine. It's not an absolute reading. So don't think of it like a stock exchange release, like, oh my God, we've got this grade. But what it gives you is kind of high, medium, low, or no. And that contrast then gives you an antimony anomaly. And these anomalies can be kilometres long and they can be 200-300 metres wide. But in that very definition, now you've got a hotspot. And we'll be talking a bit more about hotspots as we move forwards. And a hotspot of any sort of magnitude of half a kilometre, a kilometre or two, is a very interesting hotspot, I think, especially if there's no drill holes or previous mining. That's, again, a very fascinating opportunity in Victoria, I think, from a genuine technical point of view.
Okay. Well, look, finally, we're going to be just trying to tempt you to give us a bit of an insight into upcoming news. You've mentioned hotspots in Victoria, but over the next few months, without making us insiders or anything, what kind of news should we be looking out for from ECR?
I think to keep it strictly outside, Tim, you can look forward to more drilling, more drill results, probably more talking specifically about hotspots, for example, as we move forward. So the plans to gather that data and, of course, releasing data and anything that we find. And then, of course, Queensland as the extended wet season. Eventually, the wet season has to finish before the wet season starts in December. There's sort of a necessary insert of a dry season, at least historically, which will give us access there. So, and I'd be hoping that sooner rather than later, during this field season up there, we'll see some things coming. And then, of course, lastly but not least, with the Philippines, we're going through a real an asset reviews sort of situation. So I've suggested to the team that let's just have a look at what we've got, put together the data in a proper and professional manner, sort of like an updated or a refreshed, not quite a 43-101 or such like, but something parallel to that. And let's make sure that before we decide what we want to do there in the Philippines, we've got a very definitive and commercial plan, and we have clear understanding of what we're looking for, what we expect to find, and what we think the benefits would be. Because again, we have to acknowledge the recent history in the Philippines with open cut mining policies and so on. It is what it is. And for ECR Minerals, given the potential value and the potential focus of actually finding something that we've not seen before, either in Victoria or Queensland, that's the sort of thing that will very much draw our energy very quickly if it's got that, legitimate, demonstrable, this is really worth working and focusing on quite seriously. So that could happen any time in the next 6 or 12 months, in my view.
Well, Andrew, thanks for joining us today. You must come back and keep us updated on progress. And as a new chief executive, I'm sure we all wish you every success. That was Andrew Haythorpe, Chief Executive of ECR Minerals. As I said at the top of the show, ECR listed in London with a market capitalization of £11 million sterling. That's it from Blythe Ray Business News for this edition. Thanks for watching.